Pleasure to be here at the NLPI Conference 2025. I'm joined by my friend and ex-colleague Soumyodeep Mukherjee, who we shared together, and we solve so many Fortune 500 clients, solving their complex AI transformations. Today, we'll be presenting a key topic that how we can enable all kinds of analytics, starting from business intelligence, which is operational analytics, to advanced analytics, which is traditional ML and AI, including generative AI, to an architecture which is domain-driven, which is decentralized, and which is very much flexible. So if you look at last 3 to 4 decades, the kind of evolution that has happened in terms of the data architecture side, the infrastructure, and the analytics, moving from a SQL database systems to data warehouse, to data marts, to lake, then lake house, and then data product approach. In terms of the infrastructure, a CPU-centric to GPU-centric, an on-prem to multi-cloud or hybrid approach now. And in terms of the analytics, we were predominantly doing BI kind of analytics and then moving into advanced analytics and now generative AI analytics. So our proposal here is how we can create a flexible and modular architecture in such a way which is domain-driven and decentralized to enable all kinds of analytics that we can think of. So before we dive into some content, a quick introduction about ourselves. Next slide, Soumya. You want to go, Soumya?
Oh, yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. So I'm Soumyodeep Mukherjee, and I'm currently serving as the Associate Director of Commercial Data Engineering at Genmab, which is a biopharma research firm primarily that focuses on cancer therapies and cancer treatment. And I have over 14 years of experience focusing on data strategy and AI. And my primary area of focus and core interest area is how we can apply data and AI at scale to drive meaningful outcomes, especially in the healthcare and the pharma sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Soumya. Myself, I'm Meethun Panda, and I work as an associate partner, but last more than 10 years, and I have been working with a lot of Fortune 500 clients as a consultant to solve their technology and AI challenges or the analytic transformations. Soumyodeep and I have collaborated so many occasions solving digital and AI transformations for various clients, and this was something that we came up with, an idea that how we can create an architecture in such a way that we can enable all kinds of analytics to accelerate business value. So this presentation is all from our experience and the proposal that we would like to share. Next. So from our experience, and again, if you look at, if you read all kind of research and from your own experiences, we still are living in an era where a lot of the organizations are still facing significant challenges to extract business value or generate business value from their enterprise data assets. And there are a lot of reasons, but 5 key rationales behind that is, one is the accessibility side of it is, if the organization is large, there are a lot of silos that happens, but making sure that the data is accessible or not. Is data accessible? Is the data available when you need it? Is the data of right quality? That is something that you can use to gain create some tangible value. Can you create an asset which can be reusable across your organizations? Can the product or can the data that you're building the product, and can it scale over time? And can you monetize the data assets? And these are really key. All it looks simple, but in our experience, these are the really critical enablers as you want to start extracting the business value from your data assets. Next. Now, common themes that you'll constantly hear if you work in an industry or in 80% or 90% organizations have challenges that you'll hear either one of these or all of it, right? You'll hear that, hey, look, we are doing a lot of work, but our data is still not trusted. It goes back to your data quality. It's really expensive to integrate latest tool and technology. It goes back to your architecture, the legacy or the modern architecture side of it. Our reports are always delayed. This is your BI analytics or operational analytics, right? Because of the way that has been designed, unfortunately, it takes weeks or months instead of hours. You'll hear that I'm worried about data breach and security. So the privacy and security in terms of the architecture is not properly designed, and it is not penetrated or not adopted in every part of your architecture. Our analytics capability is limited and doesn't provide relevant information. So these are, basically, and we have been hearing this since the last 8 to 10 years. irrespective of small, medium, large, or very large organizations that we have been working with, right? The large organizations is more kind of consistently hear these kind of issues. But if you sum it up, all these issues and tied up with the architecture side, it has to do with the architecture, because as I mentioned, the architecture has evolved. And so this is going to be our key theme of these presentations. Not only the infrastructure, not only the analytics side, but the architecture is the central point which can enable your business value. Because architecture will enable or enable your data accessibility of it, data availability of it. A lot of data quality policies as part of the data governance that you'll implement can also be solved in your data architecture, the privacy and security architecture, the scaling data storage and compute and the processing. Again, it all comes down to the data architecture side of it. Next. So how to solve this, right? Again, as I mentioned, organizations need to design a fit for purpose data architecture, because this is one area that is continuously evolved. We always look at to solve one kind of use case, and we don't look at how we can accelerate multiple types of use cases given an architecture standard, right? So maybe the next slide will be better to discuss the kind of an architecture, Soumya. So look, designing the right data architecture is not just solution first or architecture first. It has to start from the business requirement. And again, that is aligned to your business strategy or the enterprise strategy that, okay, what is the business requirement? What are the value we are going to get it, right? What are the pain point it is going to solve? So identifying the business requirement is really, really important. It can evolve, yes, but making sure that first you understand the business, what you are trying to solve. Then you have to choose a right architecture pattern, which is something that we'll cover in the next slide. But we have some architecture archetype choice, and you need to choose the right architecture to solve various kinds of analytics or various types of use cases, again, aligned to the business requirement. Then you have to move to the technology choices. What sort of tooling and technology will be relevant to enable your target state or enable to your target architecture? That's really important. And finally is the delivery model, right? What should be your operating model? What should be your governance model, which will help you deliver to enable your use cases, analytics use cases. Next. So this is a busy slide, and let's try to unpack here. If you look at the evolution of the data architecture, we have moved away from data warehouse-based architecture, which is predominantly to do a BI kind of work or business intelligence work. Then we move to the ecosystem of databases where we have multiple ETL or extract, transform, load data kind of pipelines. Then we have lakehouse pattern. So if you look at the first generation and second generations, it is more to do with the structured data, right? But our needs are now, we have moved away from only the structured data, because we need machine generated data, we need user generated data, we need external data. So the spectrum of data has gone well beyond the structured data sitting in your transactional systems, right? Now, when the cloud adoption started around 2015-ish, 2010, 2015 around, this is where the organizations realized that there is a significant benefit to bring the operational data and the analytical data into the same plane, right? And this is where the lakehouse architecture or the third generation architecture that became very popular to solve both ML, machine learning kind of AI use cases, and also the traditional AI use cases, operational analytics use cases, because it combines the best of warehouse and the data lake approach. From our experience, and most of the organizations have invested more on the lakehouse pattern or the third generation architecture. But once you get to a certain point and you don't get the right value in terms of the cost, operational efficiency, and acceleration of the business value. And let me tell you why, because there are a few things that the third generation doesn't solve. One is the ownership side of it. Who owns what? Because look at the big picture of it. If you look at the big picture, the ownership is very, very important. The second is the data quality. There is no proper construct, there's no proper governance here to improve the data quality. And the third is there is a centralization here. This pattern is still centralized, and centralization team creates a bottleneck. And there are much more to it, but these are the kind of three things that I would like to highlight here, and which I mean is still you don't create right value after you hit a certain point. Now the better approach would be to create a trusted, business ready to access data sets, and which can be consumed, which can be reusable across your organizations. So without reinventing the wheel to create the integration pipeline every time, you don't need to, right? If you want to solve a business analysis, so for example, if you have customer domain, you're building some customer related data products, domain transaction related data products, or inventory related data products. Now, if you want to build an operational analytics, get the right data. If you want to do some machine learning use cases, get the data from there. So you are not doing the ETL pipelines from the source to integrate into the data lake or warehouse and then doing that. No, it's already there. The product is ready. Tomorrow you want to do a generative AI use cases. Yes, just bring some additional unstructured data, pick the right structured data, build your model, right? This is the essence of the data as a product approach. And our proposal here is, if we do it correct, data as a product approach correct, you can solve all kind of analytics, BI analytics, advanced analytics, and generative AI analytics to accelerate and to drive your business value. Soumya, would like to continue from the next?
Sure. Yes. Uh, so, uh, but before I start, I see that there's a video that's on. Maybe I'm not sure that's intentional. I see that Shelena. I think I'm not sure if you're intending to share the video. So, yeah, just wanted to call that out. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Meethun. So I would like to dive into some of the core fundamentals of data mesh, which is the most popular decentralized data architecture that we have today. So first, uh, so it has mainly like four core principles, which I'm going to talk about. First is the functional driven data ownership. So what it does is it takes away the dependency from a central data team to manage all the data pipelines, and infrastructure and governance, and places the ownership on the functional teams so that they can manage their data creation, data asset generation, and consumption uh, in like to them from the central team. So that really places that really transfers the ownership from the central team to the domain driven team, right? So to the domain teams, right, so that they can manage their own data assets. uh, Data as a product is really a concept that comes through naturally from the data mesh, because now that the domain team is responsible for the data assets, teams would no longer generate just the raw data and hand it over. They have to make sure that those are high quality data assets, which are actually leveraged by the business, right? And that really is the core concept of data as a product and data product, right? uh, and then the self-service data platform. So the dedicated so the platform team would still be there, but they would just provide the tooling and the technology and the infrastructure, uh, so that because the business team or the domain teams, it's not their responsibility to figure out the infrastructure and the tooling, but it provides a greater flexibility for them so that they can use the right tools, technology, and the infrastructure to build their data pipelines and the data products efficiently. And then the federated governance means that although the responsibility of the data assets is primarily on the domain team, but there would still be a centralized governance which would ensure that the standardization is maintained so that the data is interoperable, and it's also the environment is secure, right? So these are like the core principles of on which the data mesh concept is based on. Now, moving to the next one, we are going to talk about some of the inherent challenges in a typical centralized architecture, and how data mesh overcomes some of these challenges, right? So if you look at some of the top challenges faced by organizations today on a decentralized architecture, one is like time to market, right? Because everything depends on the central team for delivery, right? And the central team doesn't really have business context, right? So obviously different business teams would place their request to the central team, and they would prioritize based on maybe value, but they don't really have business context. And for the business team, each one of them would obviously want to prioritize their own initiative, right? So that creates a bottleneck among the team. And then second is the data findability, which means that the central data team produces data. They have like a lot of burden, right? uh, they undergo, like, they are always under enormous stress of, like, fulfilling the backlog. And obviously this is not a model which can scale, right, as the organization grows. And so obviously they're not like, we can expect that what we typically see is they don't maintain like a good data catalog. As a result, it's all there in the environment, but when the business team actually needs to use the data, they don't know where to go, or they don't know how to find that data, right? And then the rigid control. So basically, obviously, the central team, since they are responsible for the data asset building and management, they place obviously like restrictions. And the business team, they throw out all the requirements to the central team. There's lack of transparency, because obviously, like, and always the business team would complain that their priorities are not getting fulfilled, right? It's a common theme that we see. And so that creates some sort of like lack of collaboration and trust between the IT and business, right? So how do we uh, uh, how do data mesh solve those challenges? So let's discuss those. So a decentralized architecture, as I said before, right, and as Mithun has also discussed, right, it places the autonomy on the product teams or the domain teams, right? That's the core concept, right? So the like so they can develop at their own pace, right? They no longer need to wait or depend on the central data team for assetization, right? So that creates autonomy in the organization, right? And then secondly, the concept of data product really is to make sure that not only the data is of high quality, but also there are packaging around it, right? Meaning that there is like a clear lineage that is documented, the clear data cataloging that happens, and like taxonomy is maintained from a domain perspective. And also there is a data marketplace, so that the domain teams can easily find the data, right, when required, right? So all that helps to enrich the platform, right? And then self-serve capabilities are nothing but that now the business team has the autonomy, right? They still would depend on the central team for governance and infrastructure and tooling, but they can create their own data asset, pretty much like they can do the analytics based on whatever analytics that they think is most valuable to business, right? And that creates the right balance between the central team and the business team. And we see that it improves collaboration, reduces friction between the teams, and also speeds up innovation, because it's much more agile, right? And business teams has the ownership, as well as the capability to accelerate the data assetization and analytics, right? And when we address these limitations, or when we address these challenges, it's really to ensure that the entire value chain of, like, right from the data acquisition to consumption is made more efficient, right? So when we talk about data acquisition, we see that the central team obviously has less context to the business. They would bring in a lot of data sets which ultimately would not eventually be used by the business, right? So you are creating inefficiency right from the start, right? If we talk about data storage, then these domain teams would make sure that these data are stored with the right kind of taxonomy, so that they can be leveraged by the domain team, and a clear ownership is defined. So at a later point of time, if we kind of deep dive, and look at the usage of the data, or why a data that is there in the storage but it's not leveraged by the business, we know like who to go, right? Because there's a clear domain ownership that is defined, right? And we, in this way, we can audit the system better, make sure that the data storage is not cluttered with unnecessary data, right? In terms of data preparation and analytics, again, this kind of architecture provides a lot of flexibility to the domain driven, like to the domain teams, to make sure that they create their own pipelines and generate the value that makes the most sense for the business from a domain perspective, right? And that really, kind of drives the efficiency, because now they don't have to depend on the central team for all the for all the data requests, right? And finally, with the data product concept, as I mentioned, uh, people can easily discover and access the data, right? And that really, accelerates innovation and, building models, etc. Because data foundation is at the core, right? And if a business team is not able to find the data, then, obviously that reduces the speed to innovation, that reduces that increases friction, etc., right? uh, so moving on to the specifically on the AI use cases, we see, like, as we all know, we see a shift now with especially the generative AI use cases. But be it like traditional, like predictive modeling, or, if we talk about generative AI use cases, both these needs a solid data foundation and a data architecture for these to really scale, right? And what we see is that the data mesh, or the decentralized architecture, really solves for both of these type of problems, right? So again, when we talk about domain specific ownership of the data, there is like a certain quality of data that is maintained by the domain team. Otherwise, they would not never really leverage that data, right? And that ultimately leads to the better training data, because training data is essential to train all kinds of models, be it generative AI, LLM models, or, general, like, traditional, like predictive models, right? uh, Data, as I said already, data marketplace facilitates identification of data. And now, one of the question is that I often get is like, what is the difference between data marketplace and a data catalog? So data marketplace is something that provides a very high level picture. So when we go to a library, right, big one, right, you cannot list, like all the thousands of books like in a catalog, right? So there are different levels of catalogs that exist, right? So there would be like a first level of catalog which would say that, this section contains like nonfiction, like sci-fi, etc. Then you would have like a second level of catalog where you would mention, either catalog it by, like sections, or like different types of authors, etc. And then you would have like somewhere in that section you would find a catalog where, like, let's say specific row A2 would contain this specific book, right? So that's how you have the different levels of catalog to find a specific book in a library. Similarly, in data marketplace would offer you like a broad catalog of what really, like, the types of data that exist. And as you double click, you ultimately found the exact data asset that you're looking for. And, that is really, like, data catalog is really the detailed catalog of each and every data asset that is there in the data platform, right? And obviously, as I said, data mesh improves collaboration between the teams. Now, like previously, we talked about IT and business, but it also improves collaboration between data scientists and domain experts, because now that the ownership is on the domain team, they know exactly like what data sets there are, and they know like the business use cases. So there's much better collaboration with data scientists, and they can give much better requirement of the AI use cases that needs to be prioritized. And obviously the governance, we cannot forget governance and control, and, like, access, the authorized access to the data, which is important to maintain sanity of the environment, and, which ultimately mitigates the risks, and, make sure that, the data platform is compliant. So this is like uh, a reference architecture that we came up with, which really focuses on the end to end on how this some of these like how the centralized architecture needs to be maintained and operated in an organization or in an enterprise, right? And it really gives a perspective of, like, like what, like, data sources and data ingestion. So these are pretty standard, right? The main point of it is like there would be a data-centric acquisition and curation. And and after that there would be like a pure data products that we would create, like, so for example, like product data, right? Customer master, or transactions and interactions, and then the combination of these would would be would can be used to create like domain specific data products like sales summary, customer segmentation, etc. But we cannot forget the governance, right? So the governance has to be central, and make sure that it promotes like standardization, so that there is a certain standard that is maintained when these data products are created, and making sure that and that also ensures that it's interoperable, right? Across the teams, right? And then obviously you have your different consumption layers that would be again like domain specific, focused on focus on domain specific data products, and leverage those for their specific use cases. So just to summarize, and the value proposition in terms of like how these decentralized architecture would uh, like benefit the business. So the direct value is like reduce time to the data preparation, and accelerates insights and drive business, because the domain team really is at the center of it, right? And so they can do pretty much what they want, and and that speeds up innovation, that speeds up time to market. Improve value realization, because now you can develop data assets and data products at scale to support the business use cases, rather than having dependency on the central team, as we have highlighted. The indirect benefits are like it creates consistency across the enterprise and standardized way of working. And then it improves the data awareness, because previously the business team was unaware of what's happening in the as part of the central team, right? But now that the ownership is on them, they know, they are much better aware of the data platform, and the features of the data assets and data products. So it creates an overall increase in the awareness in the entire organization. And so data mesh, the primary decentralized architecture of the data platform that we have, enables the entire organization with both short-term as well as long-term benefits. So that's all that we had.